Welcome, everyone. I am Mia Birdsong, Executive Director and founder of Next River. Thank you for being here today. I am really excited to share the research we just completed for our project, Finding Home. I'm joined today by my team at Next River and the folks from Maven Collaborative who worked with us on this project. A few housekeeping things. One, we are recording this, and you all will receive a recording after the event. Maybe not directly after, but shortly. Two, we have live captioning available. There should be instructions in the chat shortly about how to access the live captioning. There is a live captioning button at the bottom of your screen. It says CC closed captioning. If you click that, the captioning will appear, but there are a few other options around captioning as well. For the best viewing experience, in the top right corner of your screen, you're going to click the view button and choose side-by-side speaker if you would like the speaker, right now me, to be featured in your screen. So Finding Home is part of Next River's Freedom's Revival body of work. It's an experiment that applies the principles of interconnected freedom to housing and home through a collective ownership pilot with a group of women and gender expansive people. This project has two goals. One is to support a group of Black women and gender expansive folks to build liberational space and place together by eliminating the barriers to homeownership. And two is to really learn from the expertise in freedom practices that Black women and gender expansive people have developed to survive living in America. This project is an experiment in world building. Next River is an institute for practicing the future, and practicing the future is world building. We build the world we want in the future by practicing it now. And we cannot have the world we want unless we practice it. What we practice right now determines the world that we will have. And this kind of world building that we are doing with Finding Home can happen at many scales. It can be introduced as an accountability practice in a group of friends or starting a meal exchange with your neighbors, right? That is world building. Or it could be the town that I'd like to found, a town where residents get to implement the practices and policies that create the future we want and deserve. And while I am very excited about the idea of this town, some of you have heard me talk about it for a while, pursuing Finding Home is world building at a scale that is ambitious and expansive enough to teach us a lot and create material impact. It's also solid and doable. It's like a solid and doable step before we get to town. So there are going to be 4 parts to today's event. First, I'm going to ground us a bit by providing some context about why this project is so important. Then I'm going to pass it off to Natasha Hicks from Maven Collaborative, who will share some insights about what we've learned from the research we've just completed. And then we're going to come back to me, and I'm going to talk to you about how you can get involved. And then we're going to close with your questions. Speaking of questions, as they occur to you, please drop them in the chat. Allison Cook from the Next River team will be collecting those questions to bring them back to us at the end of the event. And then I also want to add that a lot came out of the research that we've done over the last year plus. And today we are only going to share a tiny bit of it. A full report is available on the Next River website, so you can dig in deeper there. And there's about to be a link in the chat if it's not already there. So you can grab the report, read it, share it with your friends, all those good things. All right. Let's put our feet on the floor. I want you to take a breath and let your gaze lower. Close your eyes and just take a moment to notice you. Notice your body. your emotional weather. And I want you to enter some memory space. And I want you to evoke a place, time, or moment when you felt safe, content, cared for, and loved. When you felt seen and you felt that your presence was welcomed. When you felt deeply and truly at home. And remember what that felt like in your body. Just allow that feeling to resonate inside of you right now. Take 2 more breaths. And just hold that feeling for yourself. Let your eyes open. We all deserve to feel at home. We all deserve to have an abundance of relationships and communities and places and moments where we feel deeply and truly at home. And in this moment, feelings of safety and belonging and the possibility that that makes room for can be very hard to hold on to because there is this relentless destabilizing force that we're contending with. And that force is materially destabilizing. I know I started talking about the destabilizing force just after you were feeling that sense of home, and I want you to hold on to that feeling of home. Because that force wants us to be psychically destabilized, to be overwhelmed, isolated, and drowning in the onslaught. But home is the antithesis of all that. It's connection, belonging, care, shared responsibility. And in this moment, turning toward the idea of home and all that it encompasses is part of how we survive this present moment. And it is also how we get to the future that we want. Two more slides, Wendy. Next one. There we go. Thank you. Home is more than a dwelling, right? Home is care and safety, belonging and well-being. And these are some of the same things that make us free. Next slide. Buying a home has long been considered a rite of passage to American freedom as outlined in the American dream. But owning an individual resource does not make us free. And if something as basic as stable shelter is withheld from most people in a society, that society is not free. Because we are all free when everyone has access to the things they need. Next slide. Owning a house may not be freedom, but within the realities of our unfree system, owning a house can be a meaningful step toward well-being. It's foundational building, right? Homeownership can provide some certainty, some financial stability, and more capacity to plan. You do not get that when you are at the mercy of a volatile rental market. Owning a home can be community building, right? It can forge a deeper, longer-term connection to place and neighborhood, strengthening the support and social fabric of a community. And owning a house is asset building. And that can still be a very effective way to build wealth and pass it on to your descendants. Next slide. There, you got it. As I'm sure you all know, Housing in America has a very long history of being a place of planning and policy that has excluded Black people from the well-being afforded by owning a house. It has also decimated Black neighborhoods when we did manage to own houses. And on top of that, centuries of sexism and racism have meant that Black women and gender expansive people specifically experience disproportionate barriers to all kinds of safety, health, economic security, and well-being in this country. Despite centuries of systemic oppression, exclusion, and violence, Black people have always found a way to carve out freedom in unfree conditions. Black women and gender expansive people have always been at the forefront of liberatory struggles in the United States. And existing at the intersection of racist and patriarchal systems has required that Black people and gender expansive people create a culture of collective care to survive. Collective care is a freedom practice because care is an organizing principle in a liberated world. Collective care expands beyond self-help or the kind of care we might experience as being part of a couple. It's care of each member of the group by the group. It's the ebb and flow at the potluck when food is brought, plates are made, children are entertained, and dishes are washed. It's many hands and hearts on us when we need it. And it's our participation in the care of others with others. We chose to design this project around Black women and gender expansive people because they deserve the well-being they have been denied, period. And we also know that all of our descendants deserve the liberated world that is enabled through this project. Given what Black women and gender expansive people have already accomplished and created under the worst conditions, I want you to imagine what might happen if we supported their dreams and nurtured their freedom practices. Finding Home does all of this. It gives a group of Black women and gender expansive people access to the well-being of collective homeownership, and it invests in their dreams and practices so we can learn from how they practice freedom. Next slide. Now I'm gonna give you, next slide. Sorry, those were out of order. There we go. I'm gonna give you a brief bit of historical context. During enslavement, all through the Americas, Maroons, who were groups of Black people who freed themselves from slavery, built free communities hidden from the outside world. In Brazil, Jamaica, Mexico, the Deep South in the United States, Suriname, and many other places, some of these communities existed for centuries, and some of them still exist today. The formation of these communities is the practice of marriage. Marriage is about creating the conditions of liberation in our lives through our relationships, institutions, households, gatherings, creating that even though we live in an unfree society. It is an imperfect freedom, but a necessary one to transition us to a truly free world. Next slide. Finding Home is an experiment in marriage. The act of freeing oneself from bondage, the creation of a free community within an unfree society. We want to create the conditions for a group of Black women and gender expansive people to create home for and with each other, with the safety, belonging, care, and possibility that enables. And in doing so, get free together. This is marriage, embracing the paradox and process of being free in an unfree world. How beautiful is that? All right. Now that we have this context, I'm going to pass it over to Natasha, who will share a bit about the research that is launching this effort in marronage and some of the insights that it produced. Natasha, take it away.
Thanks so much, Mia. Hi, everyone. Again, Natasha Hicks. I am a Reimagining Wealth Fellow with the Maven Collaborative. Wendy, if you could go to the next slide. Great. Yeah, so I'm just going to provide a quick overview of our research methodologies for this work and then highlight a few key themes that were emerging from the research. Next slide. So when we started this project, we really had two core research questions we were looking to explore. First, we wanted to understand the landscape of collective ownership models, how they matched goals with the right legal and funding structure, the challenges they faced, and the benefits that they offered their members. So for this, we conducted landscape research and interviews with collective ownership practitioners across the US, including California, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Georgia, North Carolina. And these folks had used a variety of models, including community land trusts, cooperatives, neighborhood trust models, or a combination of these. Second, we wanted to understand what Black women and gender expansive people dream of regarding home, community, family, their relationship to land, and how these dreams can be achieved through collective ownership and living. So for this area, we conducted a series of visioning sessions as well as a survey. Participants for both of those met a set of 4 different qualifications. They identified as Black, they identified as femme, non-binary, two-spirited, and/or woman. They resided in the US and they were over the age of 18. We had 25 visioning session participants ranging in age between 27 and 50 who represented a range of geographies. And then for the survey, we had 53 participants who were most commonly aged between 36 and 45. Nearly half of survey respondents were from the South, with a quarter being from California and the rest from the US. Next slide. So these 4 different research inputs over the course of the past year have created, as Mia said, a massive volume of incredible insights that you'll see in the full report. And I have the difficult task of sharing just a couple key themes that we saw emerging from this body of work as a little bit of a teaser. So we definitely encourage you to go dive more deeply into the report after this. Next slide. So one of the key themes that we heard repeatedly as we were hearing about participants' dreams of home and community was cultivating spaces of safety and security. Throughout these conversations, it became clear that in a society actively designed to not be safe for Black women and gender expansive people, many dreams around home and housing were really driven by a desire of physical, emotional, and financial safety for themselves and their loved ones. Next slide. So one participant told us, in dangerous times, you need to have community to be safe, whether it's immigration status, poverty, whatever. This goes towards building communities where you're not alone when these moments hit. And this quote really illustrates what we heard from many participants around dreaming of spaces of community where Black women and gender expansive people can flourish despite the myriad of crises we're living through and the structural systems that were designed to harm them. Participants also highlighted how they thought collective ownership could lead to financial safety. Some viewed it as a pathway to security they had not found either as a renter or a sole homeowner, by no longer feeling vulnerable to eviction or having to bear the burden of homeownership alone, having something that just can't be taken away, which leads to a greater sense of financial ease, peace, wellness, stability. Next slide. And when we asked participants about the benefits that collective ownership could offer them, one of the largest benefits selected was safety and security at 94%. And what was really powerful is that while we're having these conversations around dreams of safety and security and having that emphasized in different ways throughout different research methodologies, practitioners were also telling us that the major benefits they saw for members of their collective ownership model was providing safety. Next slide. One practitioner described how their cooperative handled a climate event. So they said during the storms, people with diabetes needed their insulin refrigerated. And so a lot of people had their medical needs met through living in a co-op and getting access to that emergency infrastructure. So I think it's reframing our communities as these resiliency hubs. When crisis hits, we know where we are, we know how to organize, we know how to keep each other safe. That has been huge. So this example shows kind of firsthand how a collective ownership model builds infrastructure for communities to be safe and to be cared for during climate events. Practitioners also shared how collective ownership models provided safety through just the simple act of offering peace of mind and financial stability, since members wouldn't be facing eviction and were no longer afraid of losing their home. So not having that weight was extremely freeing for their members, even allowing some folks to pursue dreams of entrepreneurship or pursuing their art full time. Next slide. So a second large theme that we heard repeatedly from our conversations was the importance of care and establishing communities of care. Some participants hoped collective ownership would allow folks to age in place gracefully and with dignity, counter to how aging and elderly care is currently approached. This also came up when thinking about children and families. Many were excited to imagine a model that includes safe spaces for children with communal care. And many participants expressed wanting care to be a shared responsibility, taking some of the load off the care work they've been carrying. Next slide. So to this point, one participant said, it frees people from the burden of care being on one person. I'm the oldest daughter, so I'm often looked to in my family for a lot of things. I don't want to feel that responsibility that I'm having to take care of everybody. And we heard the sentiment repeatedly. About 60% of participants had care responsibilities, and many expressed exhaustion, dreaming of a living structure that reflected the idea of the village and working together to thrive, and really being community focused rather than individualistic. Next slide. This was also reflected when we asked folks what benefits they hoped collective ownership would offer them, with 79% of folks selecting sharing care responsibilities. And similar to safety, as we're having these conversations about care as shared responsibility, practitioners were telling us many collective ownership models are providing these communities of care, from the large gestures to the smaller ones. Next slide. One practitioner shared how their community provided care to a neighbor. They said, like I mentioned, I had cancer. I luckily survived, but another co-op member did not survive his cancer. We spent so much time talking about his quality of life at the end because he had neighbors that were checking in 24/7 and bringing food and helping him die gracefully. So this powerful example shows how folks provided care and dignity to their neighbors' final days. We also heard many other examples: crowdsourcing funding to help a neighbor who is in financial stress, getting groceries for vulnerable neighbors during the pandemic, or having children roam to any unit and be fed and taken care of. So many kind of beautiful examples of how communities of care currently operate in collective ownership models. Next slide. So while we spent time dreaming about what collective ownership designed for Black women and gender expansive people's dreams and needs could look like, we also discussed what would be needed to get this off the ground. Many folks felt starting a collective ownership model was very daunting and told us, we don't even know where to start. So when we asked folks what supports they thought they would need, we landed on 4 different areas. First was actually one of the biggest challenges that we heard from practitioners, which was adequate funding for the life cycle of the project. So not just startup capital, but funding for repairs and capacity to keep the model running. The second area centered around the different capacity needs for navigating the creation of legal and financial structures. So that included administrative, legal, and financial services supports. The third area was mediation and conflict resolution services. One of the major challenges that folks anticipated was interpersonal conflict. So mediation support and helping determine community agreements to mitigate conflict was determined to be critical. And then fourth was data and research to support determining the pilot location. Various climate change considerations need to be held when deciding where to place the model, and climate change projections can help support that decision making. And really, these four supports were discussed in the context of wanting to create a model that doesn't replicate the extraction of harmful practices of our current economic system. Participants wanted a process that prioritizes ease, simplicity, and the wellness of all involved. Um, so with that, that is just a small slice of some of the findings. I'm going to pass it back to Mia, but happy for myself or my team to answer any questions you all may have about the research.
Thank you so much, Natasha. And thank you to the entire Maven team for all their incredible work on this project. So where do we go from here? And we can take the slides down, actually. With Finding Home, we have an opportunity to create something that is not only about dreams and visions, but is a powerful reality. The work of living together in community is both the survival skills we need to know right now and the freedom work for the future we want and deserve. What we will witness and learn through this project will not just benefit the people who participate in it and their families and communities. It will expand all of our understanding about how freedom is possible. We are seeking partnerships and dollars to architect the possibility of this work into a living experience. At this point in the project, we're focused on raising the funds, not just to get this pilot launched, but to ensure that it can remain resourced appropriately. This includes two kind of buckets of funding. One is we want to raise enough of a down payment that the monthly mortgage payments will be sustainable for the participants. This particular funding will be a reparations practice of wealth redistribution. It will be a gift to the participants. The second piece is about the support for our ongoing research and support to resource the needs that the participants, that the survey identified, that people who have done this before identified, and whatever the actual participants will identify they need, right? We're trying to remove the barriers and friction around homeownership and also collective homeownership, and want to make sure that the folks who participate in this are well supported. So that's the funding part. We are also seeking partners who have expertise in collective ownership. We talked to many folks with that expertise for this research, and we are clear that we do not need to become those experts. We want to partner with those who know how to do this and can embrace our vision. We will also need experts in real estate, mediation, legal contracts, land stewardship, etc., to work with us and the pilot group. If that sounds like you or someone you know, let us know. We have an email address specifically for this. It's findinghome@nextriver.org. It's in the chat. Please share the recording you get, the research report, with anybody who you think might be interested in this.